Chek. Welcome back to my video blog. Today we're going to talk about abdominal tone essentials, and we're going to look at breathing, pumping, and stabilization as three key categories in which we want to pay close attention to a concept that's rarely discussed in social or professional medical and exercise circles, but is really quite important, and it is talked about in my advanced training programs such as Exercise Coach Chek Level 1, HLC 2, and HLC 3. It's also, you can learn more about these types of concepts in my teachings from my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, which has a lot of core tests and key information and zone exercises to regulate your energy flow and balance your organ function and your breathing functions, and also harmonize your inside with your musculoskeletal system. And then in scientific back training and scientific core training, that's core and that's back, these two courses go much deeper than How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy and get into a lot of different scientific principles and clinical concepts that are useful to anyone who's a serious athlete, educator, therapist, etc. Okay? So let's look at a few key concepts of regulating abdominal tone. First thing we want to start with is breathing. Now, the most common dysfunction we have with abdominal tone is for a variety of reasons. People tend to hold their abdominals tight like they're bodybuilders, and you see it in gyms all over the place, you see it in universities. Women have been conditioned to do this by the fashion industry. I've worked with piles of women with head, neck, and jaw disorders, pain between their shoulder blades, fatigue, cognitive problems, etc. And the first thing I find is that they can't breathe properly because they're holding their abs in all the time. Then when I go to test their core function, they won't let their abdominals go. When I try to teach them how to breathe properly, they won't expand their abdomen because they're psychologically programmed to hold their abs tight to achieve a certain aesthetic standard that is not objective but subjective, which means nobody really knows whether they're achieving it or not because it's all based on your opinion of other people's opinion, which is extremely dangerous when you consider that holding your abdominals in has many long-reaching negative effects on our physiology and our psychology. So the first thing we want to do is we want to look at breathing. The abdominal muscles are actually stabilizer muscles and prime mover muscles. The inner abdominal wall, transverse abdominis, posterior oblique, the internal oblique, works with the deep muscles of the back, the pelvic floor, and the diaphragm to create a dynamic corset to stabilize your internal organs and your spine and your pelvic girdle, which allows stability for your extremities. If the stability of the core is dysfunctional, then the extremities become dysfunctional. Breathing is the chief thing that the nervous system has to orchestrate at all costs, because without breathing, you're dead. So basically, anything that gets in the way of the breathing causes compensations anywhere else in any of your physiological systems in order to try to keep you alive. And some of those compensations can have negative effects in the long run. So remember, when you breathe, the first 2/3 of the breath should come from the abdomen. So you put one finger in your belly button, one hand on your chest. The first 2/3 of the breath should be belly expansion without chest movement. Only in the last third should you see the chest begin to move. So what I'd like you to do while you're watching me now is go ahead and tighten your muscles up so you look cool, like you're, Mr. Tough Guy at a party, or you're some girl holding her abs in, hoping Mr. Right's going to come get along, or that she looks like one of the 9 supermodels in the world, only 9. And try to take a natural deep breath while you're doing that. You can't do it. And then try to take a full breath against it, and you'll see you have to work real hard, and you're going to get a lot of recruitment here in your accessory respiratory muscles, such as the levator scapula, upper trapezius, and the neck extensor muscles are going to work real hard. That leads to a lot of tension headache syndromes and decreases circulation to the brain and the face, leading to all sorts of other problems like headaches and cognitive disorders. So we got to remember that breathing is so essential that if we don't relax our abdomen and let it work naturally, On the exhale, you just let go. Then we lose key breathing functions. Since oxygen's the primary nutrient for producing energy in the body, whatever we do to disrupt the efficiency of the breathing mechanism creates an energetic deficit. That energetic deficit is usually compensated for by people not realizing that they're tired because they're not breathing, so they drink and eat sweet stuff and try to get quick energy, use espresso, stimulants, 5-hour energy, and every other crazy thing under the sun, all likely to be a compensation in part or in whole because of dysfunctional breathing, which is as common as white bread. So remember the cycle. Yin is in. So when yin is the feminine, the empty, like a vagina. Yang is the masculine, the projective. So the male and the female fill each other. So to breathe in, the belly expands. That's the feminine principle. She gets full from the inside. When she's pregnant, she expands. Anabolic energy expands from its center outward. Yet bringing the yin of fresh energy in activates metabolism, yang. So there's the physiological correlate. Exhalation is to project something. That's yang. So the masculine energy is hard, defensive, cutting. If you're going to throw a punch, you've got to have a lot of fire in your core, a lot of tone to drive that arm. So the masculine is the projective, the feminine is the receptive. The problem is our culture, both men and women, are so now heavily masculized. We've got everybody walking around with their masculine mask on, which produces emotional guarding and can result from emotional guarding. So we have a lot of people looking tough, but not realizing that they're creating huge deficits in their physiology at the breathing level and many other levels, as I will describe. So just to review, the feminine part is the inhalation cycle, 2/3 from the belly, which requires complete relaxation of the abdominal muscles, and the last 1/3 from the chest. If our culture has made it uncool and unattractive to take a full breath, then our aesthetics are far outrunning our intelligence. We've become what seems to be good looking to the untrained eye, yet we're acting in ways that cost a lot of money and a lot of detriment to our personal self. Now, if you're walking around with your muscles flexed all the time and you're pretending to be somebody that you're not, remember, like attracts like. So you'll always attract those kind of people to you, and superficial meets superficial and has a very superficial life with superficial people. Opposites attract. So like attracts like and opposites attract. This is a yang posture, and that will burn you out. Remember, yang spends energy, and like most people today, they spend more money than they accumulate, so they're always in a state of stress. So if you're holding your abdominals too tight for any reason in the gym or aesthetically, you're running the yang debt up, and eventually the yin must be repaid, and it shows up as fatigue, it shows up as chronic health problems, it shows up as digestive, eliminative disorders, and the list is very, very long. Okay, next we're going to look at the organ. Viscera means organs. So the visceral system generally includes glands and organs. You can separate the glandular system if you like, but in this case I'm including glands. So abdominal tone is very important because each organ inside your body sits in a key position and is suspended by ligaments and cradled in a very specific way. Most people think that our organs are like parts of a stereo system that you can just put in and take out. It's completely untrue. They're alive and they move constantly. If you were to see a video of your organs, even at night when you're in bed, they're constantly dancing like seaweed is underneath the ocean. And those organs have key physiological functions that are linked directly to structural function. So if you're holding your abs too tight, your organs cannot move and do their natural dance, which they need to do to move fluids, to move chemicals, to move foodstuffs, to remove waste, to bring in blood, to bring in nutrition. So when our organs are bound up tight in a corset, it strangles the organs and it disrupts what is called organ motility. As you're sitting there right now listening to me, your liver is going through a little gentle rocking motion. Your kidneys are going through a rocking motion. All of your organs are going through this beautiful, special little dance that they do that's unique to each of them. And when they need more activity or more energy, they go faster if they need to move something along. And then when they're relaxing, they go slower, just like if the music slowed down. If you hold your abdominals tight, it is like bracing them to such a degree that they now are in a straitjacket. And imagine what it would be like if I taped you to a chair all day and you couldn't move, how painful that would be and how disruptive that would be to your body and your mind. So your organs have to have these natural pumping movements, these rocking movements that are referred to as organ motility. Also, whenever you breathe, your diaphragm drops down, your belly expands because you're pushing your organs down. The diaphragm's up here, it comes down, pushes your organs down. With every inhalation, that squeezes your organs and pushes venous blood out of the organ. So that squeezes them. With every exhalation, you relax the pressure off the organs, and like a sponge, they absorb fluids. This is very critical. So now you have the motility and you have the pumping of breathing. You breathe on average 25,900 times a day. That's a lot of pumping. Think of each breath like a little cuddle you give your liver, your kidney. You give a little cuddle, little squeeze that helps push waste out. Then you inhale fresh air, hopefully coupled with positive ideas about your dreams and your future. And that enhances motility and organ mobility, and it aids peristalsis, which is pumping in the digestive eliminative tract to move things out. Also, our circulatory system is very, very influenced by abdominal tone. You have a lot of circulation going through your organs, so when you hold your abdominals tight like that, you strangle the flow of circulation through the entire body. The abdominals are connected to everything. You can't have tight abdominals without tension in your arms or legs either. If you look at the book Occupational Biomechanics by Gunnar B.J. Anderson, he'll show you blood flow studies that show an increase in contraction of only 5% of maximum can reduce blood supply up to 75% through that muscle. So when you're dealing with athletes or people that have to do physical labor, like someone shoveling all day, or a farmer, or somebody working on a cement crew, or a carpenter, etc., if they're holding their abdominals tight, it's easy to hit 5% maximum contraction. Hell, you can flex your muscles to 100%, right? So if you have this background, look at me, my daddy doesn't love me, I'm afraid, most of this stuff is fear-driven, right? Am I pretty enough? Am I strong enough? And can I pretend to be a tough guy so nobody will make me hurt? When you look at the cost of all that, you're keeping those muscles tight. That reduces circulation, yet that's an active contraction called psychological armoring that works those muscles constantly, disrupts your breathing, disrupts your organs. So at the end of the day, we have to say, when it comes to our aesthetics and our actual function, who am I really? Who am I pretending to be? Who am I projecting out there that I am? And is it really working for me? And usually what you'll see is you're emulating people from magazine ads, from television commercials, Rambos of the world that are all juiced up, and all the people that are holding all the fancy products that you don't realize have had $10,000 worth of airbrush work done on them to make them look that way. One time I saw a documentary showing what models look like when they come to a shoot and all the things they've got to do to get them ready for the shoot. And believe me, it was shocking to see the bad skin, the belly sticking out, the swollen eyes, and they had to do a lot of fancy work to make these seemingly good-looking girls good-looking. So remember that just because someone looks good in a magazine or on television doesn't mean you're actually seeing what's really going on. You're seeing what they want you to see. That's why I stand here naked and let it all hang out, because I know it doesn't matter what it looks like unless I'm healthy, and I'm pretty damn healthy. Okay? So, we got motility, we got peristalsis, we got circulation. Now we got to talk about posture. Your abdominals are on the front of your body. So if you tighten your abdominals, it creates what's called a flexor moment, or a lever arm against your spine. watch what happens to your head. Flex your abdominals, your head comes down and forward. If you got boobs, they're looking down, not up. Girls, we want them up. I hope you do too. Okay? So when the abdominals flex, it pulls the head down and forward. It pulls the shoulder girdle forward. And then in order to match the forward head, the pelvis has to come forward to keep you stable in a field of gravity. How am I looking? Girls, you want to date with a guy like that? I doubt it. Okay, so we need to be very, very aware that all that abdominal flexing and crunching must be counterbalanced by extension exercises. You got to learn to extend your spine. Stretch those abdominals out, especially after you've trained them so they stay long and healthy, or you will disrupt all these things that I'm talking about. So from a static postural perspective, if we're standing in line at the grocery store, we don't want our bellies all tight. We don't need to look like a tough guy. Believe me, if you're a tough guy and you're really a tough guy, you already know it. You don't have to broadcast it like an insecure 13-year-old. Just relax and let your body settle into itself. As soon as you get rid of all that tone, the whole world changes. Okay? Now you can actually breathe and connect to what's around you instead of acting out of this fearful position. So statically, the abdominals stabilize the structure. They're the functional antagonists to the extensors of the body. If you pick a weight up, your extensors have to turn on. They have to be counterbalanced by your flexors. There's no such thing as one side working without the other. Static posture also means, for example, if I'm going to pick up a load, if I'm going to hold the load statically, then my muscles have to work to hold me up statically. If I'm pulling a cable from behind me, as soon as I take the load, it's trying to turn me that way. So just to stand here, that's called static posture. Then there's in my book, Movement That Matters, I show you how these things work together. You have static and dynamic stability. So if this is the start position of a cable push, that's static posture. Then as I go to push the weight, I have dynamic posture. But notice that my feet and my legs aren't moving too much. So relatively, my legs are more static than my more dynamic upper body. If I'm doing a deadlift, my hips and legs are more the static component. If I pick up a box and go to put it into a car or hand it to somebody else, my trunk is static, but I'm more dynamic above. So you see, just like you have to have a certain amount of stability in a boat, or you can't move in the boat, static posture and dynamic posture work together in every exercise you do, because something's always fixed somewhere in most exercises like the ground. So there's static and dynamic functions, and not all parts of your body move at the same speed. For example, if I throw a ball, my shoulder works a lot faster than my hip, and my hip moves faster than my knee in that exercise, which moves a lot faster than my ankle. So the static component has to be supportive to the relatively more explosive components of the movement. Now, if you want to see what I'm talking about, flex your abdominals and then pretend you're going to throw a ball. You can't even get your arm back. It disrupts the dynamic mechanics of the spine. So if you hold your abdominals tight, you get fixed static posture. Then when you go to move your arm back, you have to over-rotate in the joint because you don't have extension in the spine. So there you see abdominal tone is absolutely critical, not only the way you look, the way you digest, eliminate, breathe, think, function, make love, and everything else, but how you actually move your body. And piles of injuries to shoulders, hips, and knees and backs come from dysfunctional core use. And a lot of these insults are repetitious. For example, when you breathe in, if your abdominals are tight, you cannot go through axial extension. Your curves won't reduce properly. So if you don't have the ability to use your diaphragm, which causes a lengthening of the spine, exhalation, the spine shortens. On inhalation, all the curves reduce. You get taller. On exhalation, the curves increase. You get shorter. That pumps the vertebra of the spine, which feeds the disc, which does not have a direct blood supply. So if you don't have normal dynamic abdominal tone, you will try to breathe with a tight stomach. That will cause compression on your spine, that will that'll cause an aging process or increased degenerative change of the spine because you shut the pump down that nourishes those discs and removes waste, that is. Finally, dynamic. When it comes to dynamic adjustment of tone, many people are so fixated in the abs when they go to do an exercise such as a rotational exercise. So we'll just use a simple rotation. They will pull their abdominals in or flex their abdominals as hard as they can before they even start, even if there's hardly any weight on there. So you got this overstabilization, which is then overflexing the spine. The abdominals have to be trained effectively to work in a gradiated process, progressively increasing tone as it's demanded and decreasing as it's not demanded, because that's essential to circulation and recovery and all the other things I've been talking about. So if we just use a simple example of gradation of tone, if you take a cable and pull it to your center, now notice here, I don't have a lot of torque on my body. This cable, even with weight on it, is very close to my axis of rotation, so the lever arm is tiny. So I can breathe very comfortably. Okay, now, that means I don't need a lot of abdominal tone, but as I extend the cable and lengthen the lever arm, I can feel my abs all by themselves. Now they relax, and they start getting tighter and tighter, because that's pretty hard to do. Okay? So I decrease, and I just let them go as the demand reduces. Increase. So for example, if you're going to do a horizontal wood chop at the beginning of the movement, you don't need so much tone, but as you approach the point of maximum resistance, you would increase dynamically. As you pass it, you don't need as much. As you return, you increase it. As you return back to past the midpoint, you let it go. As you throw the ball, you don't hold your tummy flexed even after you let go of the ball. You release the tone with the ball. A simple exercise that you can learn in scientific core conditioning or in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, to teach you how to gradiate abdominal tone is a forward ball roll. Start here with about a 90-degree angle at the shoulder and the hip. Inhale, activate your core just enough that you feel the belly button start to move, or you can feel the oblique line. So if that's nothing, then just enough to turn the muscles on so you can feel the oblique line. Now you should be able to breathe normally even with that background tone. I can hold a little background tone, but still use my diaphragm and let my organs drop down. So what we're going to do is, as we roll forward and increase the lever arm, we can feel the need for more abdominal tone as we go further out to maintain optimal spinal alignment. Then as we come back, we practice letting the muscles go and relax. So inhale, pay close attention. You don't need a lot of abdominals. A little more, little more, little more, as long as I can meet the demand. Now you should master that before you start doing bridging and planking type exercise. When you're doing that, that's holding you in a high level of contraction for a long period of time. And if you have this background psychological or learnt disorder of holding your abdominals tight, planking will turn you into a piece of wood. It'll plank you and lead to all sorts of these types of dysfunction. So planking without gradiated abdominal tone is a very bad idea. Typical of, shall we say, fast food education by fast food educators. So if we want to make it harder, which means you need to be a lot stronger, you go up onto your toes, you got to hold spinal alignment. Now even beginning, I'm starting about where I left off, but I can still gradiate the tone. So I activate my core enough to give me the stability I need, but as my arms go out, I have to increase the tone to the point that I can barely talk. Okay? But consciously pay attention to relax your abdominals as you shorten lever arms, so there's less and less stress, so that you learn to feel the tides of the movement. So when I'm taking this weight, Minimal tone, maximal tone, less tone. Increasing tone, decreasing tone. Inhale. Progressively increasing tone, decreasing. Progressively increasing, decreasing. Now, if you use a lighter weight, you can breathe with that, so you can actually that way you can learn to keep movement and breathing timed together, train your brain to allow your belly to expand, so while I'm under maximum load, because the weight's lighter, I can still practice breathing through my belly. Now that produces what's called a background contraction. But that's something that our bodies should know how to do, but from all the gym exercising and all the eating foods that inflame our intestinal tracts, bad coaching or non-existent coaching, etc., we've lost our natural ability. So some of us have to relearn these things. And these are the kinds of problems I have to fix on lots of professional athletes that are hurt. And the most expensive doctors and therapists in the world overlook this stuff every day. That's my little mini lesson on the importance or the essentials of abdominal tone. Feel free to investigate scientific core training, scientific core conditioning, scientific back training program design. If you want more, you can look in my advanced Swiss ball for rehabilitation, and my Swiss ball videos in general have this kind of information. Thanks for joining me. Enjoy relaxing your abdomen, breathing through your belly, answering the question, who am I really? Versus who am I pretending to be, parroting or masquerading as? And is that parroting job really ideal for my health in the long run? And practice some of these techniques, and lo and behold, you will be 50, fit and free like me one day. A little older than 50, that's right. Thanks for joining me.